they printed them out on bigger sheets, but they didn't print any bigger than what I did at my house on my little 8.5 by 11. Yeah, so much for the Save the Trees Act. Oh, really? Really? Yeah. I knew you were in the running. Somebody called me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, just wondering if you know
Oh, is this? Okay. All right.
No. Hey. No, he's a county employee now. He doesn't have any conflict of interest anywhere, does he? I wouldn't think county, as long as, because we're not voting or looking at anything in the county. We have our superintendent. We can ask Smith. He's supposed to know that. He just got hired on by the county as a building inspector. I don't see any. Code ethics for us? I don't know if there's any P&D other than ethics. I would think that Lewis, we're talking as long as it's not county, he wouldn't be inspecting the building. Hey, he wouldn't be inspecting the building. Right? Yeah, I was kind of, usually they piggyback them. Preliminary Plat, Final Plat, so I was kind of interested to see that. Who's this guy? Harry Hunter. He's I guess, well, he's got he must be working for them, 401 North Penn, huh? Well, this is, he is. He's that guy with Kevin and the judge. He was telling me some new guy moved in threatening to sue because of the contract he entered into with him or something. June the 22nd, 125 pages of documents were placed online. It is not reasonable to believe that the vast majority of those documents were not available in the city location.
Oh,
Hey, man. Yeah. Well, yeah, but you gotta, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have to vote on them individually because there could be a protest on any or all of them. Well, no, it may not be. Yeah, you gotta block them. Yeah, I give you that. Please don't leave it down there. Yeah.
something about it.
Read this.
What's up?
Read this page. That's what I'm reading. Hey,
Are you?
where are you working now?
I'm in park.
That's what I. Did you have a different cell phone number? Because I texted you when I heard about that. You never texted back. I thought, well, what in the world made you do that? Really, you just tired of gas cutting stuff? See, I've got a work phone of 65, 63, 52. I'm gonna just read it. I got a mobile phone of 973, 2160. No wonder you didn't answer. Give me your mobile number. Mobile 626-8158. Or at least put a voice message. Yeah.
Probably not.
Or a voice message saying, hey, call this number for this guy now. Especially the application.
Still surviving. David.
Hello, Steve.
Mistaken.
Dude, man, you okay? Yeah, this is gonna be great, isn't it? You're gonna have to listen to the judge. But he's over here talking. Yeah, it doesn't look like the whole neighborhood showed up. The judge is gonna put it down.
Also, it's a house. Third, she why do you say anything about that? Not just care. I didn't even ask her.
She lived next door to the neighbor. it comes up, then you just need to say, I wouldn't bring it up. Oh. That's not helpful. Well, I don't know what that is, because they received legal notice. Well, that's how they knew about it.
The note went out.
We received the notice on December 3rd. No, because they don't even put the packets together. You know, they're not even due. Applications are not even due. You know, they're not, it's like 2 weeks. Oh, I'm sure that they're very lucky. So, you know, that's not all. Could everyone please take a seat, please? We're ready to get this meeting started. Lewis, is this working? One time it was not working at all. Meredith, are we ready? I don't know if this microphone's working.
It's on.
Yeah, is it working?
Test. Oh, you
Yeah,
hear
that's-
me? That's him. Just talk closer.
Yeah,
It's on.
yeah, but it's not going to make any difference.
I can hear right there. Talk right there. Hello.
Test.
Yeah, I
Can you all hear me out there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
He's got it.
Meredith, you ready? Time is 6:03. Date is Tuesday, December 28th. This is the meeting of the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Given the date and the time, could I have a call to order? We have that, and welcome to everyone. Could I please bring this out early on that I'm sure first off, if you're going to speak, you would need to sign up. Sign the sign-in sheet. So we'll hope if you haven't done that, you want to speak, we'll give you a minute to go do that. Secondly, there'll probably be numerous people speaking for and against. We do have a 3-minute timeline. We are somewhat flexible on that, but we will, or I will, shut you off after the 3 minutes if you get up and you're just being redundant as to what your neighbor or person across the street or whatever is saying. So we would appreciate it if you would, keep your comments new and under the 3 minutes if possible. But we will give everybody the opportunity to speak. Let's see here. Yeah. Meredith, may I have a roll call, please?
Chair Story,
Here.
Commissioner McDaniel,
Present.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Here.
Commissioner Lassard,
Here.
Commissioner McCornack,
Here.
Commissioner Henderson,
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Here.
Everyone's here. We have a full quorum.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have the swearing in of the audience members. If you would please stand, please. Mr. Henderson.
For all those that are going to testify this evening, I'd like for you to raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury? Say, I do, or I am, or I will. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the agenda. If anybody has any changes or anything, bring them forward at this time, please. If not, I will accept an motion.
So moved.
And who was that?
Saul.
Saul.
Second.
We have a motion by Saul and a second by Jesse to approve the agenda for the Tuesday, December 28, 2021 meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now we have the consideration of the approval of the minutes from the November 16th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Does anybody have any changes or additions or edits to any of the minutes from November 16th?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the minutes of the November 16th meeting.
Second.
I second.
You can't second the second. Your second, it doesn't count. So we have a motion to approve the minutes from the November 16th, 2021 meeting by Steve and a second by Jana. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. So we will move right into our cases. Kevin, do you want to go, how we want to do this? Do you want to kind of go over all of them, or you just want to go on the one that we're hearing this time?
With your permission, Chairman Story and Commissioners, we would like to take cases 1, 2, and 3 simultaneously. So we have the Preliminary Plat 21-017. We have the 21018 zone change and 21019 zone change. Those 3 cases are more or less joined at the hip. It would certainly prevent me from having to repeat myself multiple times and give the same information over and over. After the staff presentation and after you've heard from the public, then you will have the opportunity you will still be required to make 3 separate motions on each one, but we won't have to do the staff presentation 3 times, if you see fit to do that.
Any objections from the commissioners?
No.
Okay, that works for us.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, we have a very exciting set of projects to come before you. Wonderful way to finish off the new year and finish off this year and jumpstart the new year. We have case number F1, which is property at 2001 West 2nd Street, 1909 West 2nd Street, and 1901 West 2nd Street. We have a preliminary plat that's proposing to combine all of those existing properties into a single large lot. We have 2 zone changes that are also affected for 2001 West 2nd Street. The zone change for a portion of the property from R2 to C2 for consistency, and 2099, which is 2nd Street, 21019, also a zone change from R2 to C2 for consistency purposes. Okay. Again, this is the request that has been made very specifically. It is 21017 is a request for approval of a preliminary plat to facilitate the financing for the development of a new Ford automobile dealership in the C2 and C4 zoning districts at 2001 West 2nd Street, 1909 West 2nd Street, and 1901. 21018, also the zone change, a request to change the zone from R2 residential to C2 community commercial to facilitate financing and for consistency purposes with the adjacent property for the development of a new Ford dealership at 2001 West 2nd Street. And then finally, a request for a zone change from the R2 residential zoning district to C2 community commercial to facilitate the financing for development and expansion of the current Nissan automobile dealership.
Turn on your mic.
No,
Back here.
that one's good. Either one, both of them show the 2099 address. Is that, it goes from 2001 to 2099?
It's the Nissan.
What's that?
Store. F3 is the Nissan next door to the west.
To the west?
Yes.
Okay, is 2099 is to the west?
Yes. Now let me double check.
Yes. Now, we jumped pretty significantly because these are large lots.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay.
here.
I was
So
just
2099
kinda-
is the existing Nissan dealership. Okay. The 2001 is the existing Hyundai dealership, which will be abandoned, demolished, redone in favor of a new Ford dealership.
Okay, I just looked a little strange there.
All right, we've got some exhibits here for you in just a second. Again, taking a look at the surrounding land uses in the area. For the preliminary plat on both zone changes, the thing to remember is to the north, we do have an existing single-family residential development. Many of the people in the audience here today are concerned about the interface between that existing residential development and any new commercial development. I do believe, though, we've had enough discussions with some of the residents that I think we have a path forward, and I'll tell you about that in just a few minutes. But the rest of these surrounding land uses, you'll see there's a combination of C4, C2, and R2. Okay, the R2 zoning designations are the subject of the zone change itself. So from R2 to C2 for consistency. Okay. What you'll see when you're looking at the maps up at the top, the preliminary plat is going to combine, the left exhibit is going to combine a number of different parcels into a single large parcel. Again, the idea is for consistency of zoning and consistency in order to facilitate financing and redevelopment of this particular site with a brand new Ford dealership. Zone change 21-018 is going to change the R2 section of the property up there to at the north end of both the existing Hyundai dealership and the existing Nissan dealership, and is going to turn that, for consistency purposes, into a consistent C2 zone. What we found, and based on the information provided by the owner and the developer, is that the funding for the development of these parcels is contingent upon consistency of zoning and a single land use. So what we're trying to do here is facilitate the funding, the financing, and the development of these new facilities. Okay. Land use and the zoning considerations, and this is a big one here, and we're going to spend a great deal of time talking about determining if the proposed area conforms to the city's land use plan and is in the public interest, not just in the interest of the applicant. But we do have people in the audience today that are going to speak about the public interest and the benefits that the entire community receives from the revitalization and the continued expansion of what truly is one of our most economically viable areas of the city. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall all give reasonable consideration, among other things, to the character of the district, which is why we're calling this a consistency rezoning. The character of that particular area is, in fact, commercial, and its peculiar suitability for these particular uses, and to conserving the value of buildings and land and encourage the most appropriate use of the land. We've taken that one step further because we do have concerns about the interface between the existing R1 and the proposed C2 zone. We've taken great pains to make sure some additional mitigation measures have been put in place to make sure that there is an adequate buffering from any potential negative impacts. And I'll introduce those mitigation measures in just a few minutes. Okay. The findings of fact with respect to the case, it was determined back in 2002 that an R2 district buffer between the R1 district and the C2 district was good zoning. That was all the way back in 2002, so nearly 20 years ago. A special use permit, though, even though it was considered good zoning, in order to facilitate the development of the property, a special use permit for a parking lot was granted in the R2 portion of this property. With respect to case 03005, it was approved in 2003, where further findings state that parking lots are no longer seen as a special use in the R1 or R2 because they represent a commercial activity. So what we've done, going all the way back to 2002, is we've taken a commercial use, a commercial land use. And I want to make very specific. We're talking about land use issues here. Okay? We took a commercial land use and wedged it into a residentially zoned property using a special use permit, effectively negating the R2 development requirements. The property has been owned and operated and has been seen as commercial. The special use permit exists. We're just trying to clean that up. It's not, in spite of the notation that they felt back in 2002 this was good zoning, I believe what they were referring to then is the concept of a transition zone. And we're going to discuss transition zones here in just a moment. Okay? The City of Roswell's comprehensive plan, and this is where we want to make sure we are consistent. The west end of 2nd Street, of course, is characterized, and this is in the comprehensive plan that was approved in 2015. So the comprehensive plan has been updated, I believe, twice since 2002, the most recent one in 2015. Okay? Land use goal number 4 is to provide a balanced inventory of land uses that allows for new commercial and industrial development to meet market and employment needs of local residents. Okay? We already have R2 property that is effectively acting as commercial property. It benefits the commercial area. The special use permit's already been doing. The only thing, again, we're cleaning up what I believe is bad planning practice and implementing good planning practice to make sure everything is consistent. Okay? Some additional considerations, and this falls into the area of community benefit. One of the biggest complaints that we receive at City Hall is that nothing's being done to facilitate the growth and development of the area, to provide new jobs, to provide economic development. The estimate right now, construction cost estimates for the new Ford and the new Hyundai dealership, approximately $25 million just in immediate construction activity. $1.8 million in GRT. Long-term revenue generation from automobiles is expected to return to pre-COVID-19 levels in 2022, which was approximately $251 million. And the automotive industry in Roswell is a net economic benefit to the city. Many of our market sectors in the city are not. We're seeing bleed out. We're seeing more money spent outside the city than being spent inside the city. These car dealerships, our auto dealerships, in fact, our entire automotive sector here in Roswell is a net income to the city. We sell far more cars to people outside the city than we do have buyers inside the city, drawing in all that additional revenue, that additional tax base. I believe Mike Espiritu is in the audience. Mike, are you still here? Yes, he is. Mike, I believe, has signed up. He's going to speak additionally to the economic benefits of this particular development and continuing to revitalize this particular side of town. Again, staff considerations, nearly 50% of Roswell automotive industry sales are from outside the city limits. Though almost half, 1 out of every 2 cars, goes to people that are not inside the city limits. When completed, the Hyundai and Ford dealerships will add nearly $4 million in annual employment income to the local economy. Estimates are right now, upon completion, they will need 100 new employees. The question, of course, that is probably foremost in your mind is why do we need to expand these dealerships? And of course, that's responding to market trends. Most of our dealerships here in town sell cars that are not only gasoline-based, fossil fuels-based, but they're transitioning over to the hybrid and all-electric vehicles. A recent article in Car and Driver magazine, in fact, talked about the top 10 hybrid and all-electric vehicles for the year 2021. Out of the top 10, 9 out of the top 10 were either a Hyundai, Honda, Toyota, or Ford. 9 out of the top 10. These new facilities are designed specifically not only to hire the people that will take care of these very high-tech cars, In fact, the amount of training, electronics training that you have to go through just to work on these cars is incredible. Okay? But also to take care of the existing inventory of regular either diesel or gasoline-fueled cars. Okay? One of the things for your consideration, I explained earlier that I believe that the original decisions going all the way back to 2002 were made in error. Okay? I provided here for you the differences between buffer and buffer zone. Okay? In talking to the people that have filled out the protests, what they really are concerned about is having a buffer, a physical barrier, or some other type of way of separating, okay, the automobile dealership and their dealerships in order to preserve not only their property values, but their quality of life. This is exceedingly understandable. But a buffer, again, an area of land which includes landscaping, berms, walls, fences, building setbacks located between land uses of a different character intended to mitigate the negative impacts of a more intensive use. Okay? Notice that a buffer is made up of physical components that go on the land. Okay? It is not a zone. The buffer zone is actually a misuse of the term transition zone. Okay? A transition zone is an area in the process of changing from one use to another, which functions as a buffer. But this assumes, of course, that the transitional zone provides an opportunity for development under the current development code. Okay? The existing R2 zones are only 125 feet wide and 300 feet, or 125 feet deep, 300 feet wide. Okay? There's no public access. There's no direct utilities. Okay? They are not suitable for any kind of multifamily development, and in fact would be a greater impact to the houses to the north than a automobile dealership set further back on the property. So with those two thoughts in mind, we believe that the use of a zoning district as a buffer is an improper use. We need to provide mitigation measures that will create the buffer that will mitigate any potential negative impacts. Okay? You have in front of you copies of correspondence that was received. We have received a number of pieces of correspondence over the past few weeks. If Chairman Story, if you would like, we can review these correspondences. I can provide you staff's input, or you can review them on your own and then ask later. But the basic theme of the correspondence comes down to concerns over not so much this development, but what may happen in the future. Providing adequate protections, noise, light, glare, but also protections from the physical intrusion of a incompatible business at some point in the future. Should the property owner decide to sell one of these and someone gets a real crazy idea and decides they want a cannabis business in these, okay? There's concerns, and those are legitimate, very legitimate, okay? Whether the cannabis business is allowed there or not is a subject of future discussion, but these are legitimate concerns, and we have taken them seriously. Okay? The other concerns are that the property may or may not have entered into an agreement by accepting certain conditions of approval. Again, I believe that is a subject for debate, but I don't necessarily believe that debate is constructive at this time. But these are the documents. You have copies of those documents in front of you that you can review at your leisure or during the course of the meeting. Okay? Proposed mitigation measures. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we bring these two different groups of people together. And go ahead and hand those out. Yesterday, after conferring with Mr. Courier, who is the author of a couple of the letters that you have there in front of you, he basically inspired me to come up with a reasonable solution to the problems that were being presented. After lying awake and tossing and turning till about 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up and started scratching down some ideas. I presented these ideas to both Mr. Crumlin, and I also presented these ideas to Mr. Courier, and it's my understanding, sir, that you have talked to a number of the people in the audience. Okay? So I want to go over these proposed mitigation measures. If you feel that these mitigation measures are appropriate, and if We would like you to read these mitigation measures, make them become a part of the record, and these will be part of the conditions of approval for the final plat map that will go on and for any future development. So I'll go over these quickly. Here we go. Okay. And so you can, let's see, do we have there we go. All right. Number 1, the developer agrees to extend the existing 8-foot-high decorative perimeter wall to the south from the corner of the Ford dealership that you see there, down southerly to where the Ford property will take a turn to the east and then across there, creating again a physical barrier, decorative physical block wall between the different property types. Okay. The developer agrees to add additional landscaping at the rear of the property in the proposed retention basins. Additional landscaping, trees with approximately 30-foot canopy, approximately 40 feet high at full maturity, placed at 30 feet on center, will not only provide an additional visual and aesthetic barrier, but will also act to mitigate any potential noise that may be coming from 2nd Street, which should something may come up, and perhaps the city engineer can fill us all in here. The primary source of noise in this area is not the dealerships themselves. Okay? The primary source of noise in this area is 2nd Street. It's the traffic. The dealerships themselves act as a mitigation measure. They are a barrier to the noise continuing to transfer out. Okay? To provide additional flood protection, the developer agrees to interconnect the proposed retention basins. We have an existing retention basin on the Nissan dealership. A new retention basin will be built on the Ford dealership. Those will be interconnected, and then they will continue on, and the outlet will be at the existing trapezoidal channel, which runs along the east edge of the property. This will virtually eliminate any potential flooding problems that would come from the development of these properties. Okay? Number 4, and this is the one that I spent a great deal of time on, because I was trying to figure out how do we protect the properties immediately to the south, while at the same time facilitating development. And a technique I have used on a number of projects in the past is a dedication of limited development rights. It allows for the property to be rezoned to C2 for consistency purposes, allows the developer to obtain his funding and his financing, allows him to develop the property in the manner shown, but preserves a setback area, and in that setback area, you are allowed to construct ancillary facilities, much like what we already have in place. The current SUP allows for parking, it allows for landscaping, it allows for the retention basin, it allows for utilities, it allows for many of these things. We're going to actually put on the final map a dedication of limited development rights and then a 125-foot swath, exactly the same as what's shown on the current zoning map. That 125 feet then will be dedicated the limited development rights there, and no new construction of a primary structure can take place within this area of limited development rights, as it will preserve a reasonable separation of land uses between the existing residential development and any proposed new commercial development. Okay? Furthermore, item number 5, at the time that the Nissan dealership, if they come in to look for approval for any expansion, they would also be required to do a plat map, most likely a summary plat. The same dedication of limited development rights would be on that map. The reason for putting that on the map, of course, is zoning can change at any time. In fact, zoning is designed to change. Zoning is designed to be flexible. It is the comprehensive plan is designed to be reviewed and renewed and updated. Okay? What does not change, though, is the land itself. By placing this on the plat map, by putting this area, this easement of limited development rights, and specifying what can go in there, that transfers with the property. So if at some point in the future, Mr. Crumlin does decide to sell even to another automobile dealership, it's on the map, it transfers as the limited rights transfer to the new owner, and they are bound by those for as long as those rights sit there. Now, I'm not saying that at some point far in the future that may completely change, but I'm not sure what the lifespan of the average Ford dealership is, but I think this will cover probably the next 30 or 40 or 50 years, I would imagine. Okay? And provide reasonable mitigation measures, reasonable protections to that property to the south. I'm sorry, to the north. Okay. Oops. Mr. Chairman, I need you to speak into the microphone directly. I'm sorry.
Maybe I ought to turn it on.
There we go. That would help too.
Any of the preliminary plats we have now, future plat, whatever, this 125-foot zone be on those plats? Or do these?
No, the zone change.
No,
the zone
I
cha-
mean, what you were just talking about with the, coming back in with a separate summary plat for the limited development area. Yeah, I just wondered to save them a step, if we get to that point and everything is approved, that they could put that on a future plat here, because all we're seeing tonight is two preliminary plats, and be honest with you, I'm not really sure how those fit
Okay.
in with where this
One
would
of the
be.
things we're doing in the mitigation measures, okay, right up at the very top, in order to address any potential negative impacts of the proposed development, the following mitigations shall be implemented, right at the very top, prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the new construction. All of these measures must be in place before, and approved.
Right, no,
before.
I understand that. I'm just saying that you're talking about I'm coming back with a summary plat at a later time to delineate that 125 foot. Is there any of the platting that is proposed to be done, if that could be included on that plat? I don't know if the surveyor's here or, but anyway, that's just something to think about, I think,
What's
that
that?
you would,
We'd have to put it on the final plat? We could include it on the final plat?
if it comes into here, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what we're looking at now. This is for the Ford dealership, proposed Ford dealership. Nissan next door to it, is this same 125 foot going to apply?
Correct. Be identical. Be essentially replacing the existing R2 zone with this easement and limited development rights.
Okay. Well, I would just suggest that if they come back with a final plat that covers this area, have it on that final plat and not have to come back at a later time with a summary plat.
The final plat does have to come back before you, so we know that's not even an issue at this point. But let's just check real quick. Is the engineer here? Yeah, come on. Would there be any problem?
Yeah, well, and it might come,
Great.
it
Evening,
might,
Mr.
please state your
Chairman.
name and address for the record, please.
Commissioners, hi, I'm Scott Hicks, engineer with Smith Engineering. I know exactly what you're asking, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the final plat for the preliminary plat that you're seeing tonight, yes, that language can be on there. But the only property that it's going to affect is what's on this preliminary plat now. What Kevin mentioned was if expansion occurs on the Nissan site, which is next to it, next door, then that's when a summary plat would come before
Okay.
the commission for approval for expansion to the north. And at that time, that language that he's mentioning now for the Ford site would go on
Okay,
that plat as well.
that makes sense.
Yes. Easy enough.
Appreciate that.
You bet.
So effectively, what you're asking to do here is to combine mitigation measures 4 and 5 under a single final plat.
Not
I don't think you
necessarily.
can.
If one of those areas is part of a final plat, include it there. So they don't do a final plat and then they have to come back and say, wait, now you have to do a summary plat showing that next 125 foot. Because that's not really, in my opinion, a summary plat.
Well, no,
Doesn't create any lot lines or anything. It would just be saying, declaring what this property use is, I guess. But it, just to try to save, if it's approved and it goes through, just to save the developer one more step.
All right. I don't think there's, I believe Mr. Crumlin is in the audience. Have any problem with what they're suggesting here? Good? Mr. Courier? Yeah. Well, of course. Well, we're making minor changes up here, but again, I understand what is going on, so. All right, and somehow I bounced out of the, where we were going. let's, okay, at this point, these are the recommendations that we are making for your consideration. Staff, there we go. Thank you, Meredith. Okay. For item number F1, case 21017, preliminary plat, again, the recommendation is that based on the land use and zoning considerations, the findings of fact, and the surrounding regulations established in the zoning and ordinance and subdivision code, staff does recommend approval of zoning case 21-017 P-plat, subject to the mitigation measures that we have discussed this evening, okay, for the purposes of a lot consolidation and the lot line adjustment. For case 21018 ZOC and 21019 ZOC, the recommendation from staff is the same. Based on the land use and zoning considerations, the findings of fact, staff recommends approval of zoning case 21-018 and 019, subject to the proposed mitigation measures to allow a change in zone from the R2 zoning district to a C2 community commercial zoning district to provide consistency with adjacent zoning districts and to facilitate the financing and development of future facilities. That ends staff presentation. We are available for questions.
Yeah, we'll do that here when we pull up the case. This was just kind of like the staff comments for, but we'll pull you back up. Okay, now we will go actually into the hearing of the case. Case number 21-017, a preliminary plat, and through all that rigmarole that with the legal descriptions and stuff. If I could have a motion to waive the reading of the finding of facts and land use and zoning considerations, please, for case 21-017.
So moved. I make a motion to waive the reading of the finding of the facts and land use and zoning considerations with respect to 20-017. Are we doing all three at once or
No, we got to
separate?
do them.
Okay.
We got to do them one at a time.
20-017 or 21.
Second.
Yeah, 21-017.
Okay, we have a motion by Jana and a second by Steve to waive the reading of the findings of facts and land use and zoning considerations for case 21-017. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. So we will start first with this case. We'll, like I said, we'll allow everybody to speak. If you, please don't be redundant, but we will give everybody the opportunity. And Jesse over here is going to be doing the 3-minute deal. We're not at 3 minutes. We're not going to shut your microphone off, but we would ask you then to at least speed things up. So is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of case 21-017? Please come forward, state your name and address, please. Anyone in favor of 21-017? Yes, sir?
Good evening. I've got a few notes here, Chair.
Yes, sir. If you would please state
Yeah.
your name and address for the
Chair
record,
Story.
please.
My name is Glenn Fellows. My address is 530 Chamiso Lane, Northweston, Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm a licensed architect, and I've been working with Kremlin Auto Group for a little over 10, 12 years. Been involved in most of the dealerships that have been either remodeled or built in that time. And I'm here to answer any technical questions, obviously, about the architecture, should they arise. And I just want to say I appreciate the volunteer position that each of you are taking. I've held the commission chair, actually, in the village of Los Ranchos in Albuquerque for a number of years, and again, I'm here to answer questions should they arise, and obviously in support of the zone changes. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of case 21-017? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Mike Espiritu. I'm at 950 College Avenue. I'm also the president and of the Roswell Chaves County Economic Development Corporation. This plat is important for approval because it's impactful for the company to obtain financing to grow their business. The impact of the growth of the business is by 100 jobs. That's about, well, it's $4 million in payroll annually. Also, it's impactful in the construction piece because they plan on spending about $25 million capital investment in the construction of facilities that's going to be platted on these new plats, which leads to more construction jobs and more GRT. So I urge you to consider approval of this request. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Meredith, do we have anybody online?
No one is requesting to speak who's online.
Thank you. Now we will open it up to anyone in the audience wishing to speak against 21-017, the preliminary plat.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Charles Currier. I live at 1900 West 4th Street with my wife. We've both signed up to participate tonight and speak. She's going to waive her time from me in regard to all three proposals. Kevin spoke in regard to all three proposals. I would ask the Commission's indulgence to allow me to speak in regard to all three proposals.
That would be fine.
Either now or later. I'll wait as you go through
No,
the process.
I would go ahead and because they're going to all be related, so you don't have to get up and be redundant on the next case. Just
Well, first I'd like to thank you, Commissioner Story, and the members of the Commission here. I can see that we have Mr. Henderson here. He's been in a different seat last time I saw him on City Council. But thank you for being here. I first want to find out if there's anyone in the audience from West 2nd Street or West 3rd Street or West 4th Street who are residents who have not received a copy of the proposed agreement that Planning Commission has provided. Is there anyone who hasn't gotten a copy of it? We have extra copies. Okay, let me start off by saying that in regard to these proposals, we did file our protest. There's a couple of letters from my wife and myself. As part of your materials, Mr. Entima also filed a written protest, and so you have multiple pages to review in that regard. I think, thankfully, perhaps you won't have to do that. And I think that we have reached what we hope to be an agreement. It's a proposal right now. I don't know if, have they gotten a copy of that? Okay. So you have a copy of the proposal that has been presented by Mr. Waver to myself. I've shared it with Mr. Entima and Mr. Campos, who are here in the audience tonight, neighbors on 4th Street. I don't know if I can adjust your, can you adjust that? Maybe go back to just a site where you can see kind of an aerial. There you go. Just for purposes of where we are, if you look at that picture and you look at the north side of that property, just above the green on the far right side, that's my house, right across the alley. That's my house. The house to the west, immediately of me, is Mr. Campos. and the house to the west of Mr. Campos is Mr. Entema. So obviously, we're very concerned about what goes on the other side of our alley. We would like to let you know that based upon the proposed agreement that's been presented by Mr. Waver, and I thank him for putting that together. It's a fair amount of work. He and I had a long conversation yesterday, and we started out, maybe we were a little bit crossways when we started out, but after a short period of time, we started focusing on ways that we could accomplish something that would be beneficial to both parties. Obviously, we're in favor of economic development. I have no objection to people making money. I want them to make a lot of money. The more money they make, it makes me happy, okay? Just so the council knows, I have no objection to Mr. Crumlin and his business doing great. I hope they do great. I bought a car from him. I hope he does wonderful. In regard to this proposal, of course, it affects us directly. And what we're talking about is a change in the property. We, as opposed to what Mr. Waver said, if you read our documents, you know we have a difference of opinion in regard to how we got to this point and how it all developed. I'm not worried about that now because we're looking forward. And however, what we would like to do is let you know that as part of this proposed agreement, that my wife and I have agreed preliminarily to withdraw our protest, but we want to see the final plat. Mr. Waver's indicated that before you folks have a final decision, you want to see everything in writing. You want to see it detailed, and so do we. So when I say preliminarily we're waiving our protest, I mean until we see it all. And we're also preliminarily waiving any right to cross-examine that we may have. Perhaps you don't agree that we would have that right. Nevertheless, we don't need to argue about it right now. We're going to waive that for the time being, at least I am. Waive it for the time being. Let's see what comes out of the final plat. The proposal that's been made by Mr. Waver that you have, in principle, looks good to me, looks good to my wife. We're happy with it. And if the final plat carries forward with all those things, then I would say our preliminary withdrawal of our protest is a permanent withdrawal of our protest, and we're fine with the commission then going forward with approval of the change of the zoning, combining the lots, those three areas into a single lot to facilitate the financing that Mr. Crumlin seeks. So that's where my wife and I are right now. Does the commission have any questions for me?
No, Judge, but I've got a point there that the first case we have is a preliminary plat. So the final plat would subsequently follow at a next month or whenever at some point. And you would certainly get a chance to see that as well as we would. But the zone changes, I don't believe, if you're concerned about that with the zone changes, that would be a definitive answer tonight from us, either yes or no. So there wouldn't be a preliminary zone change per se, as there would be a preliminary plat.
Well, then how do we protect, how are the residents there protected in regard to our protests and making sure that our protests remain valid and that, we still can essentially come in and complain about things later. And so you educate me on that.
Well, yeah, like Jesse just said, they gave us this letter, the proposed mitigation measures that we could put as attached to our motion for either approval, if it, would be attached with it, assuming it would be voted on and approved, these mitigation measures would be a part of that document.
All right, and then your proposal is grant the change in zoning, grant the replatting. That goes to council, and then when would council hear that?
Well, the preliminary plat would be signed, or, preliminary approved tonight or whatever. The final plat would come back to us. And at that point in time, it requires signatures from utility companies and prior to approval, and, everybody looks at it, and then it would go to council for approval, which we would forward on to the council with our recommendation to either approve it or disapprove the final plat. The zone changes, I don't believe, go to council. Is that right, Kevin? Unless
Currently, the zone change,
appealed.
yeah, the zone change would not go to council. However, I think I have an idea that I think will satisfy everyone. You can go ahead and conditionally approve the zone change with an effective date of the recording of the final plat. So you can approve the zone change, but it is not implemented. It does not become effective until the final plat is reviewed, approved, and recorded.
Okay, but does the Nissan dealership, does it require a plat? A replat?
They will, and this is where I'll have to get Lewis's input here. Does that fall under a traditional summary plat if we're adding an easement, or would that have to go through the traditional preliminary and final plat process?
For adding the transitional buffer or the buffer, it would just require a summary plat. You're not changing the lot sizes, you're not changing anything, you're changing one condition, so that could be one summary plat that could come back next month and be approved if that's what's decided to do.
So if that, per se, like the Nissan lot is not going to need, as is, a replatting, then they would have to come back with a summary plat to develop that 125-foot zone.
That is correct, because Nissan is not part of this preliminary plat.
Well, in regard to the proposed change in zoning, can this commission then hold off on the proposed change in zoning until it sees the final plat? Which you're going to see the final plat probably in 30 days anyway, or less.
Mr. Hicks, how far along are you on the final plat?
Is there any reason to believe we can't schedule it to come back here 30 days from now with the final? Can we do that? We've already got a pretty full schedule for January. We already have 6 items on the January agenda.
Well, I think, like Jesse was just telling, if we attach this as part of the minutes and part of the motion, that these items...
This has to be adhered to.
And it specifically says it's for the preliminary plat and both zone changes. So I'm assuming that if the commission, if we approve it, or even attach it to our motion, whether we approve it or disapprove it, it becomes part of the record and part of the case, which says that these guys are required and agree to all these conditions. So I would assume that if some of these conditions were not met, then you would have a case behind that.
And I presume good faith on the part of everybody here. Don't misunderstand. All I'm trying to do is be sure that we preserve the possibility of our legal rights, that's all, and not necessarily, basically, I don't want to give up everything on the front end hoping that everything comes through on the back end.
Right.
And because what we're talking about right now, of course, is the front end giving up the zoning, which is the R2 zoning. That's really our concern right now.
Right.
So,
So Kevin, let me, just a second, Jake. The rezoning, we've got what, 4 rezoning? Or 3 rezoning and 2 plats, right?
Correct.
So does the rezone cover all this area? Would it, I mean, like, they're gonna rezone the Ford, the Nissan, and whatever's to the west?
We have 3 separate rezoning cases.
Mhm.
Okay, they run with each of the different properties.
Okay.
Okay, so we have yet to hear the rezoning case for the future Hyundai, which is much further to the west.
Right. That's
Okay,
what I'm
and-
asking. There is the rezone, so this letter,
This just has these cases.
just has these first 2 cases on it. Well, the first 3, the preliminary plat, and then.
Correct.
So we would probably need to have something drafted up too with the other cases to show the other areas, right? Because I'm not sure, like, is 018 the zone change, is that for Ford, and 019 the zone change for Nissan? You know what I'm getting at is that you're gonna have maybe a spot lot in there that doesn't have this 125-foot enforcement in it.
Right now, if you, the 125-foot enforcement area is only on the future Ford dealership and the existing Nissan dealership. That line, that zone on the existing maps
Okay.
does not extend beyond the limits of the Nissan dealership.
So these 2 that's mentioned in here, these 2 that they're concerned about with the Ford and the Nissan adjacent to their properties would be addressed with this letter?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's and again, one of the reasons that Mr. Courier brought this to my attention as part of the background discussion that we were having on this is I wanted to make sure that any agreement we had was in writing and was read into as part of the public record, which is why I took the time to write everything down, send it to Mr. Courier, send it to Mr. Crumlin, provided it to you, so that everyone knows that this is what is expected, that this is what is going to be required, or Mr. Crumlin does not get his certificate of occupancy. That's the bottom line, is if he does not do this to your satisfaction, to our satisfaction, to the commission's satisfaction, okay, we're going to withhold his certificate of occupancy. Now, beyond that, you were concerned about your legal rights to protest. A month from now will be another public hearing. You have if things do not meet your satisfaction, you have every right to show up at that public hearing, refile your protest. If it goes to city council, you have the opportunity to refile your protest. I don't think you're giving up anything by allowing things to move forward at this point and allowing us to implement these measures that will provide, I think, the greatest level of protection to the properties.
well, I understand, we may have the right to come forward again with additional protests if necessary, but there may be different issues in regard to how the council may go about being able to approve or reject something coming before the council. And that filters into the things like state statute, percentage protests, all that kind of thing. I just want to be sure that, we're not giving up everything and then later on we're just stuck with what comes out. That's all. And I'm just voicing
We understand. And that's what I was trying to point out, is that the preliminary plat is a preliminary plat and doesn't go any further until we see the final plat. The zone changes, whether approved or disapproved, the only way that can go any further if it is appealed one way or the other to the council. Because
Well,
we
that-
don't have to send the zone changes past this commission.
Okay, well, that's, obviously that's something in the back of our mind is if this commission says, okay, the zone change is approved, does that mean then we got to file our appeal to the city council to have the city council review that? And would we have to do that now?
Yeah.
And
Yes, sir.
then while,
Yeah, you're-
awaiting the,
Yeah, your
final
appeal would
plat.
have to be done within days and go to the next
If
council
we
meeting.
if we approve the zoning change, but we attached the supposedly agreed upon terms, these must be followed or he will not get the certificate of occupancy. So that is this being attached to the motion. Whoever makes the motion, make sure they attach this. That's your guarantee that he has to follow through with all this. But the zone change, once it's passed tonight, unless objected to city council, will not be changed after, was it Thursday by noon? It has to be objected to, I think, Kevin,
Yep.
if we pass it tonight?
Technically, if the zone change is passed tonight, the zone change is in place.
Yes.
Okay? The hammer that we're essentially holding over Mr. Crumlin's head, though, is that certificate of occupancy. The zone change itself does not give Mr. Crumlin permission to build anything.
No.
Change anything, do anything.
But I think Mr. Kerr is just concerned about saying, okay, the neighborhood, he is okay with this.
Yeah.
Wants to make sure that this is followed. But what I'm saying is this is attached to the motion. This must be followed, is what I'm saying.
okay, well, I think I understand, and so if I have any time left, I'll waive it for Mr. Intima. He's done a lot of legal research on this, more than me, certainly. So, anyway, that's all I have. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Unless anybody has questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Story, members of the Commission. My name is Hess Eintema, or Eintema, just call me Hess, it's way easier. And I live at 1908 West 4th Street. I'm the landowner. I live there with my wife, Sarah, and my 2-month-old Sadie. And thank you for getting me out of the house for just a little bit. I love her to death, but a lot of crying. All right. So I think I have just, before anything else, I think whether or not we're waiving protest matters because of the 20% rule. And has the commission made a determination on whether or not the 20% rule applies to these two zoning changes?
We defer that to the city. They're the ones that have all the commission, in other words, the commission doesn't figure that out.
Is it the city's position that the 20% rule applies?
At this point, the 20% rule does apply, unless you have, unless, again, this is where it gets slightly, if the protests that you've received, the written protests you've received, are withdrawn, we fall below that threshold. Because the one written protest that includes all the neighbors, all the people within the 100 is a single document that was provided by Mr. Courier. If he's comfortable with withdrawing that preliminarily, then the 20% rule does no longer applies. However, if we need to leave that in place, then the 20% rule does apply, okay? In which case, 3/4 of the Planning Commission must vote in favor, or 2/3 of the Planning. We need a supermajority, which effectively is 5 of the 7 of you must vote in favor, or must vote, or the motion for approval fails.
All right. So I guess, so that answers the question. If the 20% rule is in effect and we haven't had an official withdrawal of the protests, I'm afraid this commission actually doesn't, at least my reading of state law is that the commission doesn't actually have the authority to do the rezone, but this has to go to the city council. And I would urge the commission to simply refer this to the city council. If you guys are curious, that's NMSA 321-6, which provides, if the owners of 20% or more of the area of the lots of land, including the area proposed to be changed by a zoning regulation, or within 100 feet, excluding public right-of-way of the area proposed, ... shall be approved by the members of the governing body of the municipality. And while I understand that the municipality has given you some authority, they don't actually have the authority to give you authority that something to do that state law doesn't allow them to. We're not a home rule municipality. So I think this actually does have to go to the council one way or the other. And I think settlement agreements are difficult. This is a wonderful project that I hope we can reach an arrangement to so that it gets developed. Lord knows we need the development in Roswell. But something so complicated shouldn't have been drafted in one day. And I think it would behoove us all to approve the preliminary plat and then move this with a more settled mitigation measures agreement where we could then withdraw our protest formally next month. That way, you would have the authority to make the zoning change, and our appeal issues could be extinguished at that point.
Let me
Yes.
get, so you're suggesting that we address the preliminary plat case and table the two zoning cases until next month?
Correct. And then the zoning would be approved with the final plat that would be in concord with the agreement the neighborhood and the developer reaches.
Mr. Crumlin, do you have any problems with that?
I think we're taking the word of this gentleman on New Mexico state law. Would you agree with that? I don't know New Mexico state law. I don't know if what he's saying is factual or not. Okay? I think we came here 12 years ago, and we came into this room with an agreement. And after midnight, we left because the agreement was altered by one of the people that agreed to the agreement prior to that. Therefore, we started some difficult, I guess, emotional changes to it. You know, we came in here, I think, with a reasonable, we've agreed to it, a reasonable request. Nothing essentially, the way I understand this, is changing what we can build. We are still adhering to we're 129 feet. Is that what we are? What is our
139.
setback right there?
So the board 139. for the-
139, and we don't have to be at 139. We have to be at 125. We are exceeding that, not with any intent to build anything closer to R3. Okay, nothing has changed except finance people say, you need to have all your zoning the same for us to finance it. So that's why we came here looking for this.
Right, so the issue you have would be with, can you complete your funding application on a preliminary plat? I mean, if it's already, say preliminary plat's got to come back as a final no matter what. So would it affect your timing if the cases were reheard with the final plat and the zone changes were addressed at that time?
I wish I could comment on that more intelligently. Most of you know Toby Gross. He's not here this evening. He's the one that's taken the forefront with the building departments between Ford and any other buildings that we have going.
Mm-hmm.
He came down with COVID. He's not here this
Oh,
evening.
no.
So he went and got an infusion today. Otherwise, he'd be here and could answer those questions a lot more intelligently than me. But does that affect anything? Except that we came here with all intention to have a zoning change tonight, and not to impact the neighbors any further than what they're already impacted by the special use permit.
Okay.
I don't think Mr. Intima is complaining about anything you want to do. I think we're all on board on that. He- Right, all he's asking is, in regard to your loan situation, does it matter, you're gonna have a preliminary, plat approval tonight for purposes of your loan? Is that good enough to continue moving forward? Because you're not gonna get a final plat approval until a month from now anyway.
Right, so we couldn't get any of our approvals done probably before the end of the year. Everybody's closed, okay, all the finance. But the further this kicks down the road, the further, it won't be January, it'll be February. And then if there's a technicality or something, it'll be March.
I can speak to that. The ordinance only allows for one deferral, so it has to be decided next month, one way or the other.
So I would, I'd look to you guys, I'd look to Glenn, or Smith Engineering. Does that cause us a problem?
Well, so do I.
I think we're there. I think Commissioner McDaniel, like saying two or three times already, that as a condition of their motion, that get back. Take care of, I might take care of this. Should.
The issue we have, this agreement has not been vetted by a land use attorney to make sure it's lawful. That's the bottom line.
Repeat that?
This agreement has not been vetted by a land use attorney to make sure it's the type of encumbrance we can put on the land legally. It was written today.
Yeah, the utilization of this type of dedication of rights is.
Are you a practicing attorney in New Mexico, sir?
If two parties agree on something, if the residents are saying they're okay with this, unless there's residents that aren't okay with this.
I'm one of those residents right now.
Okay,
Then.
well, that's all we had to
Sorry,
hear.
no, but it's even if we're okay with it, if it's an illegal contract, we can't file it with the county and have it attached to the land for future use. That's what I want to sign this. I just need to pass it by a land use attorney to make sure it will hold up in court if Mr. Kremlin chooses to do something else with the land in the future or sells the land. I think it's pretty reasonable to ask for more than 1 day to review a legally binding agreement on our property rights.
Anyway, I asked the commission to make a ruling on it tonight. If you choose not to, so be it. Then, you know, we've spent a lot of time, money on this. Maybe we need to find another site for it. Maybe we don't need to build a fourth store at all. You got a 50 or 60-year-old one on Main Street. We are the only company in New Mexico, auto company, that has continually built new stores. And this community has improved vastly for that. We are not building some schlock house. Go look at the ones that we built. You know, we just want to move ahead. That's all. I'm 69 years old, I think. I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm not going to pay for this in my lifetime. I want to move ahead. So I'm asking you to make this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Whatever you do.
Well, we don't have any city legal representation here tonight.
Call somebody?
So, go ahead, continue, sir.
All right. So just to clarify, the commission is not going to make a motion to defer then?
We don't know that yet. We're going to
Okay.
wait and listen to you.
Well, in that case, so sorry, if there's a deferral, I don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of
Right.
preserving the record. If so, I would request the ability to cross-examine all people who've testified. Is that something the commission will grant?
Tonight?
Yes.
I don't believe that's under our purview. I mean, you're getting into areas that we've never gotten into. So
Yeah,
we're not
I'm
really-
simply requesting my rights as established by New Mexico case law.
And that's what we don't know.
Okay.
We take your word for it, but we don't know that because I could stand up here and say that's incorrect.
Oh, sure. I guess,
so-
should we defer until the city attorney could be here?
Kevin, what do you think?
Again, I have my own opinion. No, I'm not a practicing attorney. I'm a practicing land use planner that has been in this business for 40 years. And the utilization of mitigation measures and conditions of approval has been not only reviewed, but adjudicated and also implemented in cities nationwide. What you're being asked to do here is nothing more than what has been practiced. In fact, it was Dacey, not whatever you put in your versus the village of Ruidoso, and prior land use decisions that actually specified that a unilateral or a bilateral contract was totally appropriate. In fact, it is the foundation of conditions of approval and mitigation measures.
I think
That is, we are following Dacey right here. That was one of the things he brought up and said we are not following. It's in truth. Okay?
I think
The ability to provide mitigation measures is well within your rights to do so, to implement mitigation measures. Your ability to make decisions as a planning commissioner, as a planning commission, okay, is within our zoning and development code. The city attorney has reviewed our code multiple times, made sure that we are following state law, that we are well within our rights to make those decisions, to implement mitigation measures, to do as you please. So at this point, though, I think in order to satisfy some of the concerns, it may be worthwhile, if it's not going to affect Mr. Crumlin's timeline for development, because the preliminary plat and the zone change, the final plat, and the implementation of the zone change are joined together effectively. You could approve the preliminary plat tonight, subject to the conditions of approval. Continue the 2 zone changes for 30 days to a date certain, which is well within your rights to do. At that point, we'll be back with the final plat. And then you can approve the final plat as well as the 2 zone changes simultaneously. Everything will be in place for Mr. Crumlin to move forward. And I believe that should result in the withdrawal of any objections.
That sounds great to me.
Judge, you okay with that?
I'll defer on that point to Mr. Hentema. He's better up on it than I am, but in principle, yes. The other fallback position is that you can go ahead and do the change in zoning, approve the change in zoning with the conditions as are set out in the mitigation letter, and put that in, and then it's going to take a couple of days to get that in writing, and then we have a couple of days after that to do an appeal if we want to appeal, and then it's going to get on the city council agenda maybe in February, but by then we're going to know we're going to have a final plat in any event. Probably in the next couple of weeks we'll be ready to go forward. We'll know at that point. If everything is good, we withdraw our appeal, and that's the end of it.
Okay. Tom, are you okay with that?
I am.
Okay.
I just want to thank you guys for your time. I want to thank Judge Courier for spending the time with planning and zoning to hammer this out. I thought we had an agreement, and I think we do. We'd just like to have you guys make a decision.
Right, and we understand that, and I think we have, we guys probably all have an agreement. I think we need to get our legal involved and address some of these concerns and issues, and we will know that by next month.
Again, everything that's been written here is being done nationwide, at cities nationwide. Everything we're proposing is nothing new. We are not reinventing the wheel here.
Right, we understand, but I think
the only thing that's subject to review, and we will work with Mr. Courier and Mr. Yentema. As soon as the final plat is presented to us, we can provide copies. They can review the verbiage of it well in advance of coming back before you. If they would like to suggest changes, we'll have time to implement those. Okay? But if they, I would assume that, we have a land use attorney right here who will assist us with the appropriate verbiage.
Okay.
Thank you for your
All right.
understanding on this.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on case 21 dash whatever it is? 21-017, the preliminary plat. Scott, you're not going to be able to go home tonight. You're going to need to go get working on the final plat. Being done other, I would accept a motion on case 21-017, which would include the normal rigmarole and to include the proposed mitigation measures. The motion would be just for 21-017, the preliminary plat, and then we would move to table or postpone the other cases on a case-by-case measure.
Chairman Sori, if you could do me the favor with the motion that you're about to make with respect to the zone changes, let's make sure that we use appropriate language and that those items are continued until the next Planning Commission meeting. Do we have an exact date?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Meredith, what is the next Planning Commission date? It's got to be late January, 4th Tuesday in January. make it certain so we all come back and know what's on the agenda.
But again, we're just talking about 20-017 right now, the plat.
Yeah, the preliminary plat, yeah, the motion would be, of course, to approve that, subject to the conditions of approval.
So we don't need a date on that.
And the,
I think January should be the 25th.
and January 25th is the next available date
Yeah.
for 20-018 and 21-019.
And you want us to use the language continue, not table.
I'm sorry?
You want us to use the language continue, not table.
Continued, yes, please. Continue to the next public hearing. And then we can reopen the public hearing at that point in time. That will give the gentleman here the opportunity to come back in to withdraw any protest, subject to approval of the final plats. Again, but we have to reopen the public hearing at that time. So continued, not tabled.
Okay.
Okay?
Could I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve case 21-017 preliminary plat with the finding of facts, land use and zoning considerations, staff recommendations, and testimony we've heard tonight, with the understanding that these proposed mitigation measures that we've been presented will be adhered to.
Second.
I have a motion by James and a second by Jesse. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Question. Do we have to do a roll call vote because there's the objection, 20% or more?
I think because of it probably would be a good idea to do a roll call vote, yes, on this particular case.
Roll call vote. Chair Story.
Yes.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes.
Commissioner Lassard.
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson.
Yes.
Commissioner McCornack.
Yes.
Motion carried,
Thank you.
7-0.
Okay, I think to move this all along, we are going to move to case number 21-018, a zone change. I don't think we would need to waive the reading of the finding and facts or whatever. We just need to have a motion on to continue until next month.
January 25th.
What if something happens and we don't have it that day?
The next planning zoning meeting?
I mean, in all actuality, we
I'm
might
sorry?
not, something could happen to Smith Engineering's building and we don't have a final plat on that date or something. So,
I have a feeling that we will not be disappointed by Smith Engineering's efforts.
do you know Scott? Oh. Okay, could I have a motion, please, for case 018?
Like to make a motion, case 20-018, ZOC, to be continued to the next planning zoning meeting, January 25th.
Second.
Got a motion by Jesse and a second by Saul to continue case number 21-018 until the January 25th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Do we need to?
Aye.
roll call
You
vote?
want a roll call on
We need a
that?
roll
I
call
don't
on
think
that?
we need a roll call on that one, do we?
No, we're not voting.
Because we're just voting to continue it. We're not voting yes or no.
No, I don't believe a roll call vote is required on just to continue in this particular case.
Meredith, you okay with that? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Case number 21-018 has been continued. We will move forward to case number 20-019 with the same stipulations, please. It's 21-019.
So I just make a motion?
Same motion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue case 21-019 ZOC to the next planning zoning meeting, January 25th.
Second.
We have a motion by Jesse and a second by Jana to continue case number 21-019 to the January 25th regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we will hear case number 21-020 and 021. Kevin?
Chairman Story, would you mind if we took a 10-minute break just in between the two and to reset and get ready for the next one?
Anybody have any
people-
objections to that?
No.
Short recess.
Okay, we are in a 10-minute recess.
Thank you.
And I'll give tribute to John Madden. Anybody else here? Evidently, he passed away. John Madden, evidently he passed away today.
Really?
I got a text from my daughter saying, hey.
Oh, no. Not just
I don't know.
How you doing tonight? Oh, yeah. Starting off. Yeah, of course. Appreciate you.
Let us know that they're in the right of way. It's like they're over the sidewalk. I don't know what's the big deal with that. What's happening, Mike? How have you been? Good, very good. That's a good time with family. Short time off. So my wife has been home. She went to a hospital to get the procedure done, so I stayed home and kind of bummed it with her. It was real nice. Yeah. I don't want to be a housewife anymore. I want to get back to work. I don't know if I could do that for a long period of time. That's a lot of
Yeah, look, it may be, may not be in zoning, maybe, well, I mean, it may be.
I've always thought that was
Yeah. Well, I don't know what they have to turn in when you get it, but I mean, it is, because it gives you much time to put it together. By noon tomorrow.
But David, look, dude, the beginning. Not me.
So now I'm confused. So, well, so Tom said there wasn't. No. He said he didn't think there was. They're not within 100 feet. They can, but they don't. Yeah, but it doesn't count all of the protests. I don't like Sunday because yeah, and they didn't fix it. Yeah.
It's not like you're sitting in a great big room. No.
Do you know where the Planning and Zoning Commission appeals are? Is that
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, he
Appeals?
Yeah.
It's in the procedures. It's right in the very first part of the zoning and development code. Yeah.
Because Commissioner McDaniel recommends that we look to revise that, to give them more time than no time at all.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell them it's in the zoning because I didn't know where it was. He was asking.
I know. Okay. We need to swap out the boards.
Yep. Right, thanks.
If we could please take your seats, please, we'll get on with the next cases. Okay, we are back from our 10-minute restroom break. Kevin, would you like to present both cases? The 21020 and 021 is much the same as last time?
If that would please the commission, I will happily do so.
Okay. Point of order here, Meredith, you would like the waiving of the reading of the findings and facts and stuff before Kevin gives us, because then we'd have to open up both cases, right?
Wait on both.
Huh?
Either way.
Okay, we're gonna waive them later. If that doesn't work, then you guys can fire me.
He goes, I go.
All right, proceed, please, Kevin.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The next two items on tonight's agenda are similar to what we've just been discussing, but also significantly different. So, item F4 is Preliminary Plat 21-020. This is to combine lots for the creation of the brand-new Hyundai dealership. This is going to replace the existing Hyundai dealership on the site where the new Ford dealership is going to be built. So we're taking everything, moving them west down the street, almost to Sycamore. But where the existing Alsop's gas station is, that is scheduled. This is the property right next door to that. So we're filling in the remainder of the auto center with this particular project. And then the zone change is, this is the property north of 2301 West 2nd Street, 21021 ZOC. This will be a zone change from R3 to C2, again, for consistency and to facilitate development. Biggest difference between this project and the three that we just heard is the number of petitions opposing the project. We have one letter of opposition, and it is the procedural letter that was issued by Mr. Hentema previously. Other than that, we have received no responses, no negative responses from any property owners within a 100-foot radius around. They were all properly notified, and at least as of 5 o'clock this evening, we have received no letters whatsoever. So the 20% rule does not apply on this particular case. Okay. Again, 21020, a request for approval of preliminary plat for the purposes of lot consolidation. Again, virtually identical to the project that we just talked about. Then the idea is we're also going to be abandoning, though, 3rd Street, a portion of 3rd Street, and vacating a 25-foot east-west alley east of Sequoia. Again, the idea to get rid of there were some existing easements on the site. There used to be an old home, single-family residence on this site many, many years ago. That home has been vacated, demolished, it's gone, but the easements and the existing utilities are still there. The utilities will be abandoned in place, the easements gotten rid of, and we move forward. The zone change itself is a request for change of zoning from the R3 residential zoning district to the C2 community commercial on a portion of the property currently owned by the applicant, again, to facilitate the financing for the development. This is also a zoning that will provide consistency in this entire area for the commercial development. Okay. One of the biggest differences with the preliminary plat as well as the zone change, to the north of this is nothing but open space right now. You have the bird sanctuary, you have the Spring River, and ultimately the golf course as well to the north. Okay. To the south is the West Side Business District, so it's all business in there. East and west also C2s and R3s and R3s and R2s. Okay. Map showing what we're proposing here with the lot consolidation. Again, the preliminary plat, we're going to be combining probably 4 or 5 parcels into a large single parcel to facilitate the development. The zone change on the currently R3 zoned property, which will match up with the property to the south and again facilitate the overall development of the new Hyundai dealership. Okay. The proposed zone change, it is congruent with the objectives from the city's comprehensive plan and will facilitate and improve the local automobile industry and the prosperous local automobile industry. It imposes no negative financial impact to the city as the developer has chosen to accept all potential risk. Now, this is something that was not in the previous, and it's something that should make you feel good about approving this development. There's no incentives involved here. Okay? This is a developer paying their own way. They're coming forward. They're not asking for any incentives. They're not asking for any tax rebates. They're not asking for anything other than the opportunity to build, develop, and enhance this region. Okay. The staff review, land use goal number 1 is in compliance to promote quality infill development and redevelopment within existing neighborhoods or areas already served by city infrastructure. This is something that's always very important. The further we send infrastructure out, the further we send out police and fire and other services, the more it costs the city. Infill development is always preferable to pushing the boundaries of the city out. Economic development goal number 1, achieve a sound local economy which attracts investment, increases the tax base, creates employment opportunities, and generates public revenue. All of those goals are met by this particular project. Okay? Again, your findings based on the land use and zoning considerations, staff is recommending approval of zoning case 21-020 for the purposes of lot consolidation, lot adjustment, 3rd Street abandonment, and the vacation of the 25th, the alley east of Sequoia for the development of a new Hyundai automobile dealership. And then 21021, the zone change. Again, staff recommending approval of that. There are no proposed mitigation measures other than those which are currently ensconced in our zoning and development code. The proposed site plan has been developed, a copy of it. You can see some of the buildings and the proposed site layout and everything else. It does meet all current zoning and development requirements. No additional mitigation measures are necessary on this project. And with that, staff
number 21-020 of preliminary plat. Can I have a motion to waive the reading of the findings of facts and waive the use of zoning?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Jesse and a second by Saul to waive the reading of the finding of facts and land use and zoning consideration for case number 21
Dash
There's a typo there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Meredith needs you to speak directly into the microphone, or make sure your microphone's on again.
It's not on.
I'll start watching.
Jesse reaches over and turns it off
Is Jesse messing with you again?
when I'm not looking. So, you want me to repeat that? Okay, we have a motion by Jesse and a second by Saul to waive the reading of the finding of facts and land use and zoning considerations with respect to case number 21-020. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of case 21-020? In favor? Mr. Hicks, if you would please step forward and give us your name and address again, please, for the record.
Good evening again. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Scott Hicks with Smith Engineering. We prepared the preliminary plat you have in front of you tonight for this case. I just wanted to briefly explain what's going on here to further what Kevin said. We're adjusting some lot lines. We're abandoning some old lot lines and vacating and abandoning a couple of, well, one easement and one right-of-way. I have discussed this with Mr. Nahar as far as the vacating of the easements. And I think any concerns he had have now been taken care of.
Scott, have you talked to utility companies? Do they have any issues?
There are no utilities that are private in either of these two that were vacated. The alley, if you will, is a city sewer line, and it terminates about halfway through that property there.
And it's going to be abandoned.
And it's
is
going to
that
be
correct?
abandoned in place.
But is there any other utilities in those those easements? Okay.
There's not. And in the right-of-way as well. That street right-of-way was established there for, a continuation of 3rd Street, and it's never been developed that way. So what this will allow is the site plan is, as previously shown, to be developed on this property. And then to the north, for that rezone, which we'll get into in the next case, but it will have the laydown area and the staging area for the delivery of the vehicles as well. So that's what's going on here. All the other easements that are shown, the north-south easement there along what is called Sequoia, those do have utilities, active utilities, and those will remain in place. We're not changing anything there. So I'll stand for any other questions or be available if any come up.
Okay. Any
Okay.
questions of Scott?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in case, I gotta go home. It's getting late. In favor of case 21-020. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, Mike Espiritu, Economic Development. Thank you for serving our community on difficult situations like this evening. But I will share with you everything we talked about, including this case, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, this is an economic development project. It's truly impactful to our community. We have a business that's been trying to work this for 20 years. The number of jobs we're going to create, the impact to our GRT, the impact to our construction companies that work here, live here in our community. But more importantly, this company not only just reaps the dollars in, but they give a lot back to our community, and I think you all know that. You can go anywhere and hear about the good they do for Roswell and the many people that live here, for the many programs they contribute to. It's an economic development project because it creates greater economy of scale for our community. Because with every dollar that they spend in payroll, for example, nearly $20 million a year with their new employees, will multiply 3 to 7 times, which means that dollar turns, and that one person that gets that paycheck, they're going to go out, they're going to buy groceries, they're going to buy fuel, they're going to buy everything they need to service their homes And those people they pay those dollars to, they do the same thing. So that's the multiplier effect. So it's not just 20 million. It's much more than that. I urge you to consider this replat and the rezoning because it is a project that is meaningful to the growth of our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Anybody else in favor of this case? Being none, anybody wish to speak against case number 21 dash, what is it, 020? Because we have 21021 up here. Yeah, that's kind of messy. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address again, please.
Good evening. Hessel Eintema, 1908 West 4th Street. I'll keep it brief. Thank you guys for your patience earlier. That was we're going to have a good banter. I like this. I simply, just speaking to preserve arguments that I've already presented in writing, and I just had one question is, so the procedure under the ordinance requires that when the city's involved, there should be a meeting, I believe, 10 days before with any department that's affected. And I was just curious if the Parks Department had said anything to you with that meeting, or if that meeting happened. Oh, sure. So if you look at the procedures section of the ordinance, if a city department is affected, planning is supposed to schedule a meeting with them.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just curious if Parks had any comment about this, because this is going to abut the bird sanctuary and the nature trail.
You know, I think I will allow Mr. Nahar to answer that question because I don't know how things used to work, but since I've come to work, Mr. Nahar and I work very closely together. Any input we need from engineering is obtained usually within a day or two after any application is made, and he and I regularly meet to discuss all of these issues.
As far as review, this was reviewed by engineering department. This is not abut the park department because the trail is a recreational trail. But we've been discussing this for over a month, and the one question that Chairman Story had about the utilities, if you can picture this plat, what we call Sequoia is all going to stay intact as it is now with all the utilities. What we're looking at as far as abandoning and vacating is only that would be east of Sequoia, which is already basically the property where they're going to have Hyundai. So when you look at this, vacations, these are the very same questions that I had. What are we vacating? What are we abandoning? What are we impacting? We're not impacting anything south-north on what would be Sequoia, only what would be on the property to the east. As far as Mr. Hess's information, again, I think he's speculating, and he's got his right to say whatever it says, but we are following procedure and protocol, Mr. Chairman and Commission.
So just to be clear, that the property does abut City of Roswell property, correct? That trail is owned by the city? And then okay, yes. And then the second point was, I don't necessarily oppose it, I just bring it up to preserve my arguments, is I drive a Hyundai. They're good cars. I plan on buying one from them eventually. But it's a bird sanctuary, and so if it was funded with any state or federal money, we need to be careful to not avoid any environmental impact statements. I'm sure that it's just not on the record. So if something like that was done, we should put it on the record. Similarly, I know the Smiths family gave some significant funding for this. So if they had any stipulations, they could also potentially have clawbacks. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against case number 21-020? Commissioners, got any questions of anybody? For or against, or staff? If not, I'd accept a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve zoning case 21-020 P plat for the purpose of lot consolidation, lot line adjustment, Third Street abandonment, and vacation of the 25 for Eastwood Westward Alley on Sequoia Avenue to facilitate financing for the development of a new Hyundai automobile dealership.
Second.
Got a motion by Saul and a second by Jesse to approve case number 21020, a preliminary plat. Meredith, would you like a roll call?
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Yeah, approved, yes.
Commissioner Story.
Yes.
Chair Story. Commissioner McCornack.
Yes.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes.
Commissioner Lassard.
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson.
Yes.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you, Meredith. Case number 21-020, preliminary plat, has been approved. We will move on to case number 21-021, a zone change. Could take a motion to waive the reading of the finding of facts, please.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Jesse and a second by Saul to waive the reading of the finding of facts and land use and zoning considerations with respect to case number 21-021. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Anyone out there wishing to speak in favor of case 21-021? We would assume that your in favors are the same as the other case, but please don't be redundant, Mr. Hicks.
I will not be redundant, Mr. Chairman. Just want to reiterate.
Nice choice of words.
Could somebody look that up?
That's what it's not being redundant. But, no, the purpose for this is to replace the property that's going to be taken up by now with a new Hyundai dealership, where they do the delivery of the cars and the staging of the cars in the laydown area. Now will be north, and that current zoning does not allow for that use. So that's the purpose for this. And we'll take it from the lot line that you see there just north of where that Hyundai site will go all the way up to the trail. So that's what this is intended for the use and the purpose to be here tonight for that rezone. Thank
Any
you.
questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of case 21-021? Anyone wants to speak in opposition to case 21-021? Yes, sir, if you'd still do your name and address, please.
Yes. Hessel Eintema, I should spell it Y-N-T-E-M-A, 1908 West 4th Street. I would just reintroduce all previous arguments made at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak against 21-021? Being none, I would accept the motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve zoning case 21-021 based upon the land use and zoning consideration, finding of facts, staff recommendation, and materials provided at this commission meeting.
Got a motion by Jenna and a second by Steve to approve case number 21-021. Meredith, would you like a roll call vote?
Chair Story.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson. Commissioner Henderson.
I'm sorry. I was asleep. Yes.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes.
Commissioner Lassard.
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
And Commissioner McCornack.
Yes.
Motion passes by a 7-0.
Thank you. That's it on our cases tonight. You all are welcome to stick around to hear other business, public comments, or announcements, or you're welcome to leave. Being of the late hour, hopefully any of those would be relatively quick and short.
Mr. Chairman, staff only has one bit of communication. Based on tonight's events, we now have not 1 or 2 or 5, but we will have 10 items at the next Planning Commission meeting, January 25th. I've been anticipating this dramatic increase in activity since I arrived last February. It's begun. So everybody mark the 25th. We need all of you here. So it's going to be, you're going to actually have the opportunity to see a zone change in reverse, though. We actually have a property proposal that is a property that's currently zoned C1. It is not a property that is in the path of development. However, it is surrounded by residential. That zone change is coming in to go from C1 to R2 to be consistent with the adjacent properties. And there'll also be a preliminary plat on that. So you're going to get to see the opposite direction with that one. But like I said, it's going to be a big agenda. So eat a good dinner, bring some coffee.
I'm assuming the city will be providing pizza or something at that meeting?
You know, I might be convinced of that. You never know. We'll see. We'll see.
All right, anything else there,
Beer and
Kevin?
pizza goes a long
We have
way.
nothing else.
Okay, any public comments?
Just
None?
before I leave, I want to thank the commission for the time they've spent today and how important it is that what you may know or may not know. So what made this such an important meeting, that we already have people from Ford and from Hyundai coming out to do an appraisal. And by making the zoning change affects the appraisal price of what we're going to do with that land. So I don't know, time's going to be of essence on the Ford side. Without that, we won't obtain the amount of financing we need. But nothing really changes for the people next door to us. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the comments everybody made. I think we made a lot of progress with the neighbors. We're more than willing to do what they want to do. So before they left, they said, well, the last thing you want is to be sued over this. Well, I don't want to be sued over it. I just want to follow procedure. But I think that's what we're asking. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we will do everything that we can to facilitate and make sure everything gets one approved next month or disapproved next month, one way or the other.
And I know you will. I've been in town 24 years. If I haven't proven some things to the citizens, I'm an old dog. It's too late to change. And I just think it's great for our community. I mean, you guys, this is a big deal for New Mexico, not for Roswell. We're the only auto dealerships that's building new stores in New Mexico. And I don't know, that's a big deal.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
The only announcement I have is that we would certainly appreciate having legal representation by the city at some of these meetings, especially when we know there could be some legal issues arise.
I will make sure that we notify both Parker and Josh, the city attorney, as well as the deputy city attorney, and see if we can have one of them present for next. We'll fill them in on the events, the concerns, the protests that have been filed, and make sure that they come prepared.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anything else, anybody? It is 8 o'clock. We are adjourned.